The heat shield is cracking. Not in a test, not in a simulation. On the actual spacecraft they're sending 4 human beings home in. Over 100 separate fractures. Chunks of material breaking off in ways nobody predicted. The engineers stared at the data for nearly 2 years, trying to figure out what went wrong. And here's the part that keeps me up at night. NASA looked at all of that, looked at those photos, ran the numbers again, made one change, and said, "We're ready." 4 people are about to climb into that capsule, and I want to tell you exactly what happens to their bodies, their minds, and that heat shield. But I'm saving the most terrifying part for the very end of this video, because once you understand the full picture, that cracked heat shield hits completely different. Before we get into it, quick question for you. Where in the world are you watching this right now? Drop your country in the comments. I'm genuinely curious how far this one travels. All right, let's go back to the beginning. It has been 53 years. Think about that number for a second. 53 years since a human being left the gravitational neighborhood of Earth and actually went somewhere. Since December 1972, when Apollo 17 splashed down in the Pacific, not one person has gone beyond low Earth orbit. Not one. Entire generations were born, grew up, had children of their own, and the moon just sat there, waiting. That changes now. 4 astronauts, Reed Wiseman, Victor Glover, Christina Koch, and Jeremy Hansen. One will become the first woman to travel beyond low Earth orbit in all of human history. Another, the first person of color. A third, the first non-American. This is Artemis 2, and the vehicle carrying them is something most people have never truly understood. The Space Launch System stands 322 feet tall. It weighs 5.75 million pounds fully fueled. It will produce almost 9 million pounds of thrust at liftoff, more than any rocket NASA has ever launched, more than the Saturn V that took men to the moon during Apollo. Sitting on top of all that controlled explosion is a capsule called Orion. The crew named theirs Integrity. Inside that capsule, 4 adults will live, sleep, eat, and breathe for 10 days in a space roughly the size of 2 minivans parked side by side. 2 minivans. That is the sum total of the world these 4 people will inhabit while they travel 250,000 miles from everything they've ever known. Now let me walk you through what that actually feels like, starting from the moment they strap in.
Launch day. Kennedy Space Center. The crew has been in quarantine for days, isolated from family, following a calorie-engineered nutrition plan, sleeping on a medically controlled schedule. They suit up in pressurized garments designed to keep them alive if the cabin loses pressure during ascent. These aren't the sleek suits from the movies. They're heavy, functional, wearable lifeboats. They ride an elevator up the launch tower and climb in. When the engines ignite, former astronauts describe it as someone sitting directly on your chest, a pressure so intense you physically cannot lift your arm in front of your face. 3 times the force of gravity pins them into their seats. Their bodies triple in weight. Breathing is an effort. The solid rocket boosters send vibrations through the entire vehicle, a deep, bone-level rattling that doesn't stop for the first 2 minutes of flight. Then the boosters separate. The shaking stops. The ride goes smooth, and 8 minutes after launch, the main engines cut off. Silence. Their arms float up from their laps. Pencils drift out of pockets. They're in orbit. For the next few hours, they verify every single system on the spacecraft: life support, propulsion, navigation, communications. Because once they commit to the moon, there is no space station to dock with, no rescue vehicle waiting nearby. There is no plan B in any traditional sense. Then comes the burn that changes everything: translunar injection, one final engine firing that breaks them free of Earth's gravity and sends them coasting toward the moon. After that, the upper stage separates, and it's just 4 people in a capsule, carried by momentum, 240,000 miles from where they need to be. Now imagine their daily life for the next 4 days. There's no shower. They clean up with wet wipes and dry shampoo. The toilet is tucked under the floor near the main hatch, about 5 cubic feet with a curtain for privacy. Solid waste goes into bags that is sealed and stored for 10 days. Food comes in pouches. A small warmer heats some of them up. The menu includes shrimp, macaroni and cheese, tortillas. Jeremy Hansen, the Canadian, apparently packed maple products and salmon bites. Most meals are eaten at room temperature, floating in a metal tube, chasing crumbs before they clog an air filter, squeezing rehydrated pasta out of a foil bag. That's lunch, 100,000 miles from the nearest restaurant. Sleep happens in hammock-style bags tethered to the walls, all 4 crew members resting at the same time in the same open cabin. There are no separate rooms. There are no doors, except the one over the toilet. The life support system hums constantly around them. Fans circulating oxygen, scrubbers pulling carbon dioxide out of the air. It sounds like the inside of a machine, because it is a machine, one keeping 4 human beings alive by a very thin margin. Exercise is mandatory, 30 minutes a day on a flywheel device about the size of a carry-on suitcase. On the International Space Station, astronauts have 4,000 pounds of exercise equipment filling hundreds of cubic feet. On Orion, you get 1 resistance gadget bolted to the floor. For a 10-day mission, it's enough to slow the muscle deterioration. Barely. And then, 4 days out, the moon begins to fill the windows. Orion will swing around the far side of the moon, the side no human has seen with their own eyes since 1972. And at their farthest point, they will be over 230,000 miles from Earth, a new record, farther from home than any human being in all of history. From that distance, Earth is small enough to cover with your thumb. Everyone alive, everyone who has ever lived, hidden behind a fingertip. The astronauts of Apollo 8 said the far side of the moon gave them the most profound loneliness they had ever felt. Artemis 2 will go farther, and the whole time they're out there, invisible particles are passing through the walls of the capsule and through their bodies. Galactic cosmic rays, solar energetic particles, radiation that Earth's magnetic field normally blocks, but out there is no magnetic field. If a major solar storm erupts at the wrong moment, the crew shelters in the most protected area of the capsule, which happens to be next to the toilet. That's the plan. That's what NASA built. 4 of the most highly trained humans alive, huddled beside a bathroom waiting for a solar storm to pass while they orbit the far side of the moon. After the flyby, gravity does the work. The moon's pull slingshots them back toward Earth, and the long coast home begins. Now, the heat shield. Remember what I told you at the very beginning of this video? Let me show you the full picture. When the Artemis 1 capsule, the uncrewed test flight, came back from the moon in 2022, it looked fine from the outside. It splashed down, cabin temperatures stayed within limits. By every external measure, it was a success. Then the engineers got close. They found over 100 locations on the heat shield where the ablative material, a substance called avcoat, specifically engineered to burn away gradually and carry heat energy off the spacecraft, had cracked and broken off in jagged, unpredictable chunks, not the controlled erosion they designed for. 4 bolts embedded in the shield had partially melted through their protective barriers, leaving deep gouges in the material. The investigation lasted nearly 2 years. What they discovered was this. Artemis 1 used a technique called skip re-entry. The capsule dips into the atmosphere, bounces back out into space, then comes back in a second time. That pause between atmospheric contacts trapped heat energy inside the avcoat without letting it ablate properly. Gases formed inside the material. Pressure built. The shield cracked from the inside out. The ground tests hadn't caught it because they tested at higher heating rates than the capsule actually experienced. And at higher rates, the material behaved perfectly. It was the moderate, sustained, in-between heat of the skip maneuver that broke it. Here's what NASA decided to do for Artemis 2. They kept the same material. They didn't redesign the heat shield. They changed the trajectory. Artemis 2 will enter the atmosphere on a steeper, more direct path, one continuous descent, no skip. This reduces the time the shield spends in the temperature range that caused the fractures.
The trade-off is that a steeper entry means faster deceleration, which means more G-forces on the crew during those final minutes of flight. And those final minutes are genuinely violent. Orion hits the top of the atmosphere at roughly 40,000 kilometers per hour, Mach 32, 32 times the speed of sound. At that velocity, air compresses so violently in front of the capsule that it forms a sheath of superheated plasma around the vehicle, temperatures reaching nearly 2,800 degrees Celsius. That's roughly half the surface temperature of the sun. A few inches of engineered resin stand between 4 human beings and that. Inside the capsule, the forces build slowly at first, then overwhelmingly. Their bodies get heavy, breathing becomes work. The windows glow orange, then white, and then communications cut out completely. The plasma envelope blocks all radio signals. For several minutes, the crew of Artemis II is completely unreachable. No signal from Houston, no telemetry, nothing. Just heat and pressure, and a heat shield that cracked last time. Then the drogue chutes deploy. The main parachutes open above the Pacific. The capsule swings beneath them, descending toward the water near San Diego. Splashdown is hard. Navy divers hit the water, attach flotation collars, and the capsule is winched aboard. The hatch opens. 4 people breathe outdoor air for the first time in 10 days. Their legs are weak. Their balance is off. Standing upright takes concentration as their bodies remember what gravity is supposed to feel like. And here's the thing I can't stop thinking about. These 4 people have seen the photos of the cracked heat shield. They sat in those briefings. They asked the hard questions. They pushed the engineers. And after all of it, they looked at the data, looked at the trajectory change, and they chose to go. Not because it's safe, because they believe the math is right this time. That's not blind bravado. That's what exploration actually looks like up close, not in a highlight reel, not in a documentary score. It's 4 people making a fully informed bet with their lives on the line, in a cabin the size of a family car, eating rehydrated shrimp out of a pouch, 230,000 miles from home, trusting that the engineers got it right this time. Reed Wiseman, Victor Glover, Christina Koch, Jeremy Hansen. If you want to follow this mission in real time, there will be a lot of noise and a lot of surface-level coverage. But now you know what's actually happening inside that capsule. Drop a comment. Do you think they got the heat shield right this time? I want to know where you land on that. And if this video gave you something the headlines didn't, share it with one person. That's how this channel grows. I'll see you in the next one.